Today I thought I'd go over for you, what does Dave Ramsey teach about buying a home? We're going to go over the financial side, what kind of home you should buy, where, and also, did I follow his advice? I want to hear from you guys. Did you follow his advice? Let me know in the comments down below, and please like and subscribe if you get good value from this content. All right, let's get into it. So as you may or may not know, Dave was a realtor in a past life before he became a financial guru. And if you're not familiar with Dave Ramsey, he's got the 7 baby steps to financial peace. And one of those is paying off your house. But he actually doesn't teach to buy a house cash. He teaches pretty much to do everything else cash except buy a home. And I think there's a pretty interesting reason for that. I think even Dave knows, who hates debt, that some real estate debt can be okay, even though it's ideal to pay cash for your home, is not required under Dave's guidance. So let's talk a little bit more about that on the financial side, and then we'll get into, again, the what kind of house should you buy and why. Dave recommends 20% down, but he says don't go less than 10% down. And you also have to keep in mind there's going to be closing costs, which are going to be another 4%. So if he's saying put 10% down, that means you need to save 14% of the value of the house you're going to buy. So if it's a $100,000 house, you need to save $14,000. $200,000 house, $28,000. So that's good. And obviously you want to have your emergency fund in place. You want to have your 3 to 6 months of expenses, and you want to have gotten yourself out of debt. I actually had a guy come to me and he was like, Rob, I want to buy a duplex. I want to move out of the place I'm living, which I think was with a family member. I said, great. So we started looking at everything, and he had some debt, not a lot, but he could pay it off with his available cash, or he could use that cash to buy the house. And I actually advised him, and I said, look, pay off your debts first, because that's going to free you to invest. He's taken my advice, and it's funny, actually, he revealed to me that he was following Dave Ramsey and he was getting conflicting advice from different people. So it's kind of nice, I guess, as a Ramsey Trusted Pro, to kind of guide people in the right way and help them achieve financial peace and make this house purchase a blessing and not a curse. So that's the main thing to understand. First off is the down payment amount you need saved. The next thing is your payment on your house. So he's recommending getting a 15-year mortgage, which means your mortgage is going to pay down in 15 years versus a 30-year mortgage. So one thing to understand with 15-year versus 30-year is your payments are going to be higher on a 15-year than they are going to be on a 30-year, but they're not going to be double. And part of the reason is because the interest rate on a 15-year loan tends to be about 1% lower. Let's say you're 3% on a 30-year, you might be 2% on a 15-year right now, give or take. So that savings in interest actually adds up. Now, but your payment is going to be higher. So the thing to keep in mind about your 15-year payment is Dave is recommending that be a quarter of your take-home pay. So if you take home $4,000 a month, then your mortgage, taxes, principal, insurance should be $1,000 a month. Obviously, like a lot of Dave's advice, that's very conservative. It's probably different than I see most people doing. However, it's not terrible advice. Living below your means really will help you have a lot more financial freedom. And as a realtor, I can actually say that yes, my payment on my house is about a quarter or less than a quarter of my take-home pay, which is nice. I'm trying to follow Dave's advice, but I'll get into more of that later. So Dave, having been a realtor and having done a lot of property investment, I believe he does a lot of property investment now, he has some good advice around buying a house, and I have to say, I took it. Buy it, I mean, some of this is advice that you kind of see just floating around from your grandmother or whoever. But basically, buy the cheapest house in the nicest neighborhood that you can. As a realtor who really understands this, that's actually really important. And it has to do with a number of things. But let's say you buy the most expensive house in the neighborhood. It's difficult to sell it if the market's not super hot. And if you make any additional improvements to that, now you're even pricing yourself above the neighborhood. I just went to a house the other day that was priced at $700,000, and all the other houses in the neighborhood were probably around $400,000 to $450,000. But the person who owned this house just did it to the nines. Like, everything new, all the nicest fixtures and carpets and put in a pool, and the landscaping was unbelievable. And I found out that the guy actually was a landscaper who owned the house. But I advise my clients not to buy that house, and that's because, one, if they go to sell that house, it's going to be difficult. And two, part of the buying process is getting your house appraised by a professional appraiser. And that appraiser is going to have a really difficult time valuing that house at $700,000, which means you're going to come up with a lot of cash to buy that house, or someone who does go to buy that house is going to have difficulty getting financing, which again makes it difficult to exit that house. So simple advice, but as a person who really understands real estate, it's great advice, and I followed it with my own house, and it made me a lot of money. So the other thing he talks about is get a house with a view, which is not something everybody can do, but look out your backyard and say, hey, is this a pleasant view? You know, is this a nice place to be? Is this a nice environment? That means you're going to sell your house easily, you know, in the future. Another important point Dave makes is understanding what you can change about a house and what you can't. And obviously location is super important because, you know, a lot in Malibu Beach versus a lot in the middle of Kansas are going to be priced totally different because there's a totally different demand for those things. But, you know, aside from location, which we all kind of intuitively know, we know kind of where we want to live and where we want to be. You know, one of the big things is house layout, in terms of, can you change the layout, or is the layout what it is, and is that awkward? Because it's a lot easier to change like cosmetic things in a house, like wallpaper, paint, carpets, even like kitchens and bathrooms. But if there's not enough bathrooms, or there's really tiny cramped bathrooms, or, you know, these kinds of things, I'm always looking out for layout, and Dave Ramsey gives the same advice about that. So understand that that's actually a really important thing. So I'm going to talk a little bit about myself and what my wife and I did personally. So get a little personal here. My wife and I really started with our location. So we really started honing in on, hey, this is where we know we want to live. And we knew we needed to save up money. So we kind of lived in a place that I would say was below our means. You know, we were both pretty high income earners, and we lived in a place that was maybe $1,600 a month, and we could really afford it. And this allowed us to really stack up cash. So we saved up a lot of money. We could do a 20% down payment. I decided to do a 15% down payment, and then I saved money to do renovations. Now, we targeted a specific neighborhood because I had some friends actually living in this neighborhood, and we just loved the neighborhood feel. I think it kind of reminded my wife of where she grew up, and it reminded me of a little bit where I grew up. Maybe a little bit different, but I'm actually living like right next to the high school that I went to. I ended up putting 15% down. Now, that does follow Dave's advice. I ended up buying a house with a pretty decent layout in a great neighborhood, but the house needed to be really renovated. And you can see I have a playlist called Flipping Westchester, which you can kind of see me going through that whole process. But basically, hey, I got a 4-bedroom house on a flat lot in a great neighborhood in a great location, but it needed a ton of cosmetic work. I did a lot of the work myself, and I had a lot of contractor friends, and it really did come out great, and it actually ended up being a huge investment. It ended up being a great investment. And the payment for us is very affordable. And, you know, my wife and I, before this, we really followed all the Dave Ramsey baby steps. You know, we max out our retirement accounts. We have no consumer debt. We paid off a ton of debt and, you know, all that stuff. So we did follow the plan. And I can say it's worked. And I think it actually allows me, one thing it allowed me to do is actually start my own business, which, you know, I now have, which has been a huge blessing for me. You know, getting out of debt and living below your means really frees you, has been my experience. So when I'm working with clients, I always want to try to help them be in the same position that I'm in, because I know it's a good place to be. So Dave's advice is really good. I think it can really work out well for you. And, you know, I'm happy I'm living across the street from one of my great friends. You know, I have other friends in the neighborhood. I love the neighborhood so much. Our house is great. We made it into what we wanted, and it's been a fantastic investment. I think it would probably sell for $250,000 above what we paid for it. Now there are some renovation costs in there, but, you know, I won't get into full math, but it's been a great investment. Let's just put it that way. Best investment I've ever made in my life. following Dave's advice has worked out really well for me in that respect. Yeah, I recommend people do it. It's solid advice. You can't really go wrong with it. And that's, I think, one thing that maybe people can get lost with is just like, well, is there a better way? You know, will my way work? Will this and that? Your way may work. It's just that this way does work. And I think it's a really good thing to practice if you want to just kind of hit the easy button on life and have financial peace. All right. Thanks so much for taking the time to listen to this video. If you're looking for a home in the Westchester area, around basically suburbs of Philadelphia or northern Delaware, feel free to hit me up. If you're trying to connect with another Dave Ramsey Pro or somebody else like that, I am super happy to connect you. All right. Thanks.